Imagine sitting in your favorite restaurant when someone you call a friend snatches your crutches and places them out of reach, just to watch you struggle. The entire room goes quiet. Strangers stare. You're 15 years old, and you've never felt more alone. Now imagine a group of leather-jacketed bikers in the corner watching everything. You'd think they'd ignore it, right? Walk away? Mind their business? What they did instead made the bullies go silent, turn the whole diner upside down, and create a moment so powerful it went viral worldwide. If you've ever needed someone to stand up for you, you need to hear what happened next. Jalen Price was 15 years old and had been living with cerebral palsy since birth. His condition affected his mobility and fine motor skills, but it never touched his spirit. While other kids his age worried about basketball tryouts or video game rankings, Jalen worried about simpler things, like whether his crutches will hold up another semester, or if people would see him instead of just his disability. He lived in a small Ohio town where everybody knew everybody, which was both comforting and suffocating. Most days, Jalen craved independence. He didn't want to be coddled or pitted. He wanted what every teenager wants: to feel normal, to have friends, to belong somewhere without explanation. That's why Mason's Diner became his sanctuary. Every Friday after school, Jalen would push through the glass doors, inhale the smell of grilled onions and fresh coffee, and slide into his usual booth by the window. He'd order the same thing, cheeseburger, extra pickles, chocolate shake, and watch the evening rush unfold. Truckers stopping for pie, families grabbing dinner before baseball practice, old men arguing about politics over bottomless cups of coffee. In that diner, Jalen wasn't the kid with cerebral palsy. He was just another regular. The waitresses knew his order. The cook would wave from the kitchen window. It was the closest thing to invisible he ever felt. And invisible, in the best way possible, meant normal. That particular Friday started like any other. Jalen arrived around 4:30, backpack slung over one shoulder, crutches steady beneath him. But this time he wasn't alone. Two boys from his neighborhood, Marcus and Dion, had tagged along. Jalen considered them friends. Not close friends, but the kind you'd play video games with or joke around with at the bus stop. The kind who made you feel included. He should have known better. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones we trust to see us. At first, everything seemed fine. They joked about their history teacher's terrible toupee, debated whether the new superhero movie was worth seeing. Normal teenage stuff. Jalen felt good, like maybe he'd finally found his crew. Then Marcus made a comment about how Jalen walked. A small joke, testing boundaries. Jalen laughed it off. He learned early that if you laugh first, it hurts less. But Marcus kept going. Dion joined in. Their voices grew louder, more theatrical. They mimicked the way Jalen's hands shook when he tried to pick up his burger, made exaggerated stumbling motions across the booth. Other customers started glancing over, expressions uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. "Bro, why do you eat like that?" Marcus said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "You look like a baby trying to use a spoon for the first time." Jalen's face burned. He focused on his plate, trying to disappear into himself. This was supposed to be his safe place. These were supposed to be his friends. "Guys, come on," Jalen said quietly, forcing another laugh that sounded hollow even to his own ears. Dion reached across the table and grabbed one of Jalen's crutches. Then the other. "Let's see how fast you can move without these," he said, standing up and walking them across the diner to the far counter, at least 20 feet away. The restaurant fell silent. Forks stopped midair. Conversations died. Every eye in Mason's Diner was suddenly on Jalen. Trapped in his booth, crutches out of reach, humiliation painted across his face in shades of red and shame. He wanted to yell, to fight back, to demand his crutches. But his throat had closed up, and his eyes were burning with tears he refused to let fall. Not here. Not in front of everyone. Marcus and Dion laughed. The kind of laughter that echoes in your nightmares. Then they walked out, leaving Jalen sitting alone in a booth that suddenly felt like a spotlight stage. The waitress approached hesitantly, retrieved his crutches, and placed them beside him without a word. Her pity was somehow worse than the mockery. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? Someone who was supposed to have your back? Drop a comment if you felt that kind of hurt. You're not alone in this. What Jalen didn't know, what nobody in that diner realized, was that a group in the back corner had witnessed everything. 5 men sat in a circular booth near the kitchen, wearing leather vests adorned with patches. The Iron Brotherhood Veterans Club. Regulars at Mason's every Friday, known around town for their charity motorcycle rides and fundraisers for disabled veterans. They looked intimidating. Thick beards, weathered faces, arms covered in tattoos, and scars from wars most people had forgotten. But beneath the tough exterior, these men understood something fundamental about dignity. They'd seen brothers lose limbs overseas, watch friends struggle with PTSD, witness what it meant to be vulnerable in a world that mistakes vulnerability for weakness. Ryder Kane, the club's president and the largest of them all, had locked eyes with Jalen across the restaurant. He'd seen the forced laugh, the trembling hands. The moment those crutches got snatched away, every instinct screamed to intervene immediately, to physically remove those boys from premises. But Ryder was strategic. He'd learned in combat that timing matters. Rushing and hot-headed often makes things worse. So he made a choice that looked like inaction, but was actually restraint. "We wait," Ryder told his brothers quietly. "Let tempers cool. See if those punks come back." The bikers stayed put. They watched Jalen sit alone for the next hour, pushing food around his plate, staring out the window, probably wishing he could disappear. They saw customers whisper and point, saw the waitress hover nervously, unsure how to help. And when Marcus and Dion walked back through that glass door an hour later, emboldened, grinning, ready for round 2, the Iron Brotherhood knew exactly what needed to happen. The door chimed. Marcus and Dion strolled in like they owned the place, heading straight toward Jalen's booth. Whatever restraint they'd shown earlier was gone now. They were back to finish what they'd started. They didn't make it 3 steps. 5 chairs scraped against tiles simultaneously, a sound that cut through every conversation in the diner. The bikers stood as one unit, boots heavy against the floor, moving with the kind of coordinated purpose that comes from years of serving together. They formed a wall between the boys and Jalen's booth. Marcus stopped dead. Dion's grin evaporated. Ryder Kane stepped forward, 6'4" and broad as a refrigerator, and picked up Jalen's crutches from where they'd been resting against the booth. He walked past the boys without acknowledging them, crossed the diner, and placed the crutches gently, almost reverently, into Jalen's hands. Then he looked the teenager directly in the eyes. "You've got more strength in you than they'll ever know," Ryder said, voice gravelly but kind. "Mind if we join you?" Jalen couldn't speak. He just nodded. All 5 bikers squeezed into and around Jalen's booth. They introduced themselves one by one. Ryder, Bones, Sandman, Truck, and Document. Each one had a story. Bones had lost his left leg in Afghanistan. Doc had survived 3 tours with shrapnel still lodged near his spine. Truck walked with a permanent limp from an IED blast. They didn't mention these things to compare suffering. They mentioned them to say, "We see you. We know what it's like to navigate a world that isn't built for you. You're not alone." One of them flagged down the waitress and ordered Jalen a fresh burger. The first one got cold while you were waiting on better company. Another started telling a story about a disastrous parachute training exercise that had everyone laughing so hard the neighboring tables joined in. The diner's energy shifted completely. What had been uncomfortable silence became warm chaos. Laughter echoed off the walls. Jalen, who'd been on the verge of tears an hour ago, was now grinning so wide his face hurt. Marcus and Dion had slunk to a corner table, suddenly very interested in their phones. Other customers were staring now, but not at Jalen's disability. They were staring at the beautiful mess of bikers and brotherhood, at the way community can form in unexpected moments. The bullies had shrunk. Jalen had grown. This is what real strength looks like. Not fists or insults, but showing up for someone who needs it. Hit that like button if you believe in this kind of power. Before leaving, Ryder pulled out his phone and showed Jalen photos from their last charity ride. Dozens of motorcycles stretching down the highway, flags waving, veterans of all ages riding together. "We do one of these every month," Ryder explained. "Raise money for kids who need medical equipment, adaptive sports gear, that kind of thing, Next one's in 3 weeks. He paused, glancing at his brothers, who were all nodding. We want you there, as part of the crew. But I can't ride a motorcycle, Jalen said, confusion crossing his face. Not yet, Truck grinned. But we're building you a custom sidecar. Already talked to our mechanic buddy. It'll attach to Ryder's bike. You'll ride with us, as an honorary member of the Iron Brotherhood. Jalen's eyes went glassy. He'd spent years being excluded from things. Sports teams, school trips, neighborhood games. Always because of logistics, because accommodations were too complicated. And now these strangers were literally building something just so he could belong. Really, his voice cracked. Really, all 5 bikers said in unison. 3 weeks later, Jalen showed up to community ride wearing a leather vest they'd made for him, his name stitched across the back above the words, Iron Brotherhood, honorary member. The sidecar attached to Ryder's Harley was painted deep blue with silver flames, equipped with extra padding and safety harnesses. A local photographer captured the moment before they took off. Jalen sitting in that sidecar, helmet on, grinning bigger than the sun, surrounded by 24 bikers on their motorcycles. The joy radiating from that image was contagious. The photographer posted it online with the caption, Real friends show up. Real strength protects. Real family is chosen. Within 48 hours, the photo had gone viral. Millions of views. Thousands of comments. News outlets picked it up. People weren't just sharing the image. They were sharing the story behind it. Mason's Diner. The betrayal. The bikers who refused to look away. The message resonated far beyond one Ohio town. Compassion can be louder than cruelty. Real friends can come from the most unexpected places. And sometimes, the people who look the scariest are actually the safest. Jalen had found his tribe, not in his neighborhood or his school, but in a diner booth surrounded by warriors who knew what it meant to fight for something bigger than yourself. Here's what Jalen's story teaches us that we desperately need to remember. Strength isn't about physical power. It's not about who can yell loudest or hurt deepest. Real strength is seeing someone in pain and choosing to sit beside them. It's restraint when you want to react. It's building a custom sidecar for a kid you just met, because inclusion matters more than convenience. Ryder Kane's words, "You've got more strength in you than they'll ever know," weren't empty comfort. They were recognition. Jalen had been enduring a level of daily difficulty that most people can't fathom, doing it with grace, still showing up to a world that didn't always show up for him. That's warrior-level resilience. But here's the harder truth. How many times have we been the silent diners, watching injustice unfold, feeling uncomfortable, but staying frozen in our seats? The Iron Brotherhood didn't have to intervene. They could have finished their meals and left. Nobody would have blamed them. But they understood something crucial. Cruelty thrives in silence. It grows when good people do nothing. And sometimes, the most radical act of kindness is simply refusing to look away. Marcus and Dion learned a lesson that day too, though not through violence or revenge. They learned that consequences aren't always immediate or physical. Sometimes consequences look like an entire community deciding you're not welcome, like sitting in a corner, invisible, while everyone rallies around the person you try to break. That's a lesson that sticks deeper than any fist ever could. Today, Jalen rides with the Iron Brotherhood monthly. He started speaking at schools about disability awareness and anti-bullying. His relationship with his parents improved because he finally had a support system that understood him. And Mason's Diner? They reserved a permanent booth for Jalen and the bikers, booth number 7, right by the window, who stood up for you when you needed it most. Or maybe you were the one who stood up for someone else. Share your story in the comments below. Let's build a community that celebrates real courage. Every Friday, you'll still find Jalen at Mason's Diner. Sometimes he's alone with a sketchbook. Sometimes the bikers join him. But he's never really alone anymore, not in the way he used to be. The booth where he was humiliated became the booth where he found family. The day that should have broken him became the day he discovered what real friendship looks like. Chosen family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when showing up is hard. Subscribe for more stories that prove humanity is still worth believing in. Next week's story will remind you why kindness always wins. See you then.